Hi there, good evening everyone. My name is Andy Bailey from Dartmoor National Park. Welcome to another one of our evening talks celebrating everything that is special about Dartmoor. So we hope you're going to have a great evening tonight. We've got Ian Johnstone, one of our Dartmoor guides, one of our education guides who's just in the wings, ready to come out and take you on a virtual tour of Higher Uppacott.
Right, good evening everyone. I would say nice to see you, but I can't. So hopefully you can all hear. Higher Uppacott then, yes. Well, I've known the house for the last 40 odd years that I've been guiding. Dartmoor isn't new to me. I've been born in London, but running around the moor since 1964. So I feel I'm beginning to become semi-local now, but now that we got to here. So Higher Uppacott, it's a Devon cross passage longhouse, granite walls, oak roof structure with Devon wheat reed thatch. They're originally one room for living in, a second large room at the other end where the animals were kept, particularly during the winter, and a cross passage in between. The living end is called the livier and the animal end is called the shippen. So let's have a look at a cutaway picture. Here we can see into the shippen. You can see the cows in there. The cows were Dexters. They weren't very big, but they got very wide horns. We have the timber framing showing. Now this is medieval raised cruck frame, and you will be able to see when I move the cursor that the end of the cruck is part way up the wall, and then it comes up to meet in the middle. We'll see this as we go through the slides, and that's exactly how Higher Uppacott would have been built. We have the cross passage here. Here's the doorway, some with a porch, some without, going across, and the living end is this bit. One big room, possibly with a screen across at shoulder height to make a second room as a workroom, and a screen here on the living side of the cross passage to, again at shoulder height, to separate the people from the animals. Okay, let's move on. This is a plan of the earliest of the houses, the ruins that you see on the moor. There are several of them out there on the open moor. Hutholes is one. Houndtor medieval village would be the other obvious one to mention. Slightly smaller than Higher Uppacott. Again, you can see the shippen there on the left with where the animals would be, the cross passage here, and there's a wooden screen here originally to just keep the animals out of where you're living. And this space would be a packed earth floor, a fire in the middle, possibly with a wooden screen here to allow you into, it says dairy here, but it might have been a food preparatory room, kitchen or general store. And there are hundreds of these on the moor that you can find virtually any day. Higher Uppacott has taken this a stage further, as we will see as we go through. What that looks like on the moor, this is one of the hutholes just up above Dodwell, near Widdicombe. This was the original Dewden Manor, which has become Jordan, we believe. There is a cross passage here. One side of it has been filled in the past, and so the livier down here and the living area up here. Sorry, the shippen down there and the living area up here. These, we believe, are based on an earlier form of house made of turf, and in this case it was bigger than this one. The new Jordan Manor is some 1.5 miles down the road. Here's a plan of Higher Uppacott. The main house, the original house, is here. This rectangle there. 1325, 1330 to 1350, something like that. Here's the shippon, where the animals, the cows, were tied up there and there. Drain down the middle, cross passage with 2 doors. There would originally have been this low wall. It's collar height is the correct term, but so that interprets as shoulder height. Your living area, Livier here, probably 2 rooms, the hall as we call it, and the inner room with another wooden screen here. And so that would be the original house. Like all houses, like ours, you know, we changed the doors, we changed the wallpaper, we changed the paint, we have extensions built, we have new windows, we have roofs changed and so on. This house has been altered several times over the years. 1500 or thereabouts, there was quite a change to this hall area. In the mid 1600s, that was altered again. The room was put upstairs, a wall was built, windows were blocked in. The late 17th century, we had an extension built here on the east side as a 1 up, 1 down. That was later altered again in the late 18th, early 19th centuries. And then in the 19th century, we had a barn built, which was again altered in the 20th century to make a 2-bedroom cottage for more farm workers. There was a medieval barn over here, but that was demolished in the 50s. So we're going to try and pick our way through here. Use your imaginations, because the alterations, some of have not been able to be removed, although the house has been extensively investigated over the last few years. And so we're going to have to think to try and look through some of these alterations to see how they are. Changes made to make it more comfortable, changes made to show that, well, we're wealthy now, so we can afford to do this, to show off, or perhaps keeping up with the Joneses. And then later on, harder times came and the fortunes of the house went down a bit. But we'll come to all of those as we go through. So here's the west view. The house lies from north to south. North is on the left, uphill. South is the lower end where the animals were, at the downhill side. Garden in front of us on the west. You can see the Livier here. You can see the shippen on the right, and the west door opening onto the cross passage to take us across. Now, this is the view that we have now from as of 2020-21. The chimney was not there originally, so it would all have been one roof line. The walls have changed. You can see that there's a slight difference between the wall here and here. This is where the roof was raised. This side was raised in the mid 1600s, and this side the roof was raised at the end of the 18th century, and you can see a slight join in the stonework. The thatch is relatively new, just 3 or 4 years old. That is Devon wheat reed thatch, as per the original. If we look that's more closely at the Livier end, you'll see it set down into the hillside. You can see the joins in the wall there a bit better. This is the shippen. No windows. There are some air holes going in. No glass in those, of course, to keep it warm, because that was for the animals. No glass anyway in the early years, because big panes of glass were difficult to make. The house is just north of Poundsgate on the road to Dartmeet. We go around now. Here we've got the south wall. Here at the bottom we can see the drain hole, so that all the messy stuff from the cows comes out. But if it doesn't flow out through there, then the farmer shovels it out through this hole here to try and keep it as clean as possible. And the hole up the top there, we feel, is probably to let owls in so that they can catch vermin, the rats and the mice, entering into the farm building. Now we come to the east side. This is where we've come into the courtyard. The shippen is here. The livier, the living area, is here. This window is not original. This is the parlour wing that was built in the mid-17th century. And these outbuildings along here were built probably late 18th century, early 19th century, and so would not have been there originally either. This is the original doorway, however, into the east side. Now, why is it here? Well, there's plenty of stone to make the walls, plenty of oak trees to make the roof. We're on the transhumance way to take animals from the farms up onto the summer pastures on the moor. There's a water supply that comes across what is now the road from the right here and across the courtyard originally. So there was water supply, and we're on a slope from right to left. Here we're showing the living area, the parlour wing from the 17th century and the 19th century barn, converted, as I said earlier, in the 20th century. Part of this courtyard has recently, in the last couple of years, been recobbled to try and reinstate what would have been there. Okay, I'll let you have a look at that. Okay. Further back from outside the gate, this is the area here where this corrugated iron is, where the original medieval barn would have been, and I'll show you later the evidence of that. Okay. So here's the original door. 14th century timbering in the frame, nice and wide to let the cows in. The inner bit that's white and the green door are not, of course, original, but the main framing is. Okay, beautiful door. We open the door, we can now see through the cross passage to the west door there. This east door, facing the nearest one to us, was the original and most used door, but later in its life we think that both doors would have been used depending on who was here. The wall on the right is not original. Remember, I said that was a wooden screen to shoulder height, so this is one of the alterations made in the 1500s, which of course can't really be removed now. So let's enter the shippen. This is pretty much original. We can't say for absolute certainty that the floor was exactly like this. It may well have been just earth, packed earth, originally in the 1330s, but it's been cobbled like this, paved like this for a very long time, certainly since late 1400s. So what does this show us? Light and air coming in through the various holes, windows. Down the outside here and on the other side over here, you can see the troughs where food and water were put for the cows. The cows were brought in from this east, the left side, the east, taken down and tethered, noses to the wall and rear ends to the middle where the drain is, a paved, slabbed drain. That they were tethered to these poles, which kept them in place, as it were, with wooden hoop type collars. Okay, so here's a close-up of the troughs on the east side, where you can see a row of stones here. You might not be able to make out the holes in those, but there are holes in to take these posts for the cows. There's a detail of those. They're sunk into the holes there and sunk into the beams, fixed up to the cross beams in the thing. So you get sort of 20, maybe 24 cows in there quite happily, I would have thought, given the size and that sort of distancing. Those are the holes for the posts, a detail of those to show that you can have, you had several stones with holes in ready to take the cows. And a couple of years ago, Parks had commissioned some wicker work dexters, so we now have a cow and a calf and a medieval milking stool in place, showing that they were tethered and proximity to the drain. We have a lovely rat. He's very well behaved. He stays there all the time. Might be because he's made of wood. And up in the top, we've got the owl hole, what we think is the owl hole, to let the owl in to get the vermin. Now, you can see here too the change in the wall. This is the original height. This is the raised bit. That's 18th century raising of timbers. So these timbers that we see here and the roofing timbers that you see in the shippen are late 18th century, not medieval, apart from one, which we will come to in a minute. So again, the drain hole for liquids from the animals, the hole to shovel out the dung, and the dung was important. That was your manure, so you saved that and spread it around the fields. There would have been branches laid across these cross beams, and the animal fodder was kept on top of those. There's a detail of the drain. And it is really quite dark in there, even on a sunny day. This is the only original medieval raised cruck beam in the building. There's a block in the wall just below here, and you can see the shaped wood going up into the ceiling. These are the late 18th century bits of timbering and late 18th century bits of thatch. The new thatch has gone on top of some of the thatch that was already there, and this is the bit of raised roof here. This goes right across, so you can now see this is the one we want. This is the early 14th century with the triangular lock piece in the middle and an original purlin. So well worth a see. It's a wonderful, piece of, I mean, mid 1300s. It's just fantastic to see it still there. But with the alterations that came in later years, that's the only one that has survived. You need to make a visit to this place when it's open to the public to see it for yourselves. Here's just a largely 17th century, late 18th century roofing going one way and the other. We're now looking south, and this is late 18th century thatch showing onto there. Okay, back to the cross passage. Here is our original beam here, our original cruck beam. We've had the plank and muntin wall removed, not wall, screen removed round about 1500. A granite built wall now with a ledge. We have notches in the 16th century beam here and joists put across. Platform has been therefore made. Now, this costs money. So good days for the house, good days for the family. They were wealthy. They had this expensive granite wall built. In fact, the wall on this side has been polished, what we call ashlar blocks, and very, very fine finish indeed. The platform here possibly used to store wool, as Devon is a wool county, possibly for labourers or hands to sleep on. It's unclear exactly what, but beautiful piece of building for that wall itself. Here's a better view of that, so you can see how smoothly finished these granite blocks are. There's the ledge. We have original 14th century timbering here on the main door into the hall. The wall goes up into the roof, but it doesn't touch the actual joists and roof supports. There's a gap. All of this roof, right from the 1350s through to now in the shippen, is open to the rafters. It's never had a ceiling, so that's permanently open. The gap is left because we have bats and they go right through to the end of the building now and have done for many years. Likewise, when we go into the hall, the ceiling in the hall was open to the rafters right through the house until the mid-17th century. So we're going to have to do a little bit of thinking as we move through now. Here we come into the living area, the livier, the hall. This is the other side of that lovely granite wall, fireplace, big lintel, but the lintel isn't strong enough to take the weight of the whole chimney above, so a relieving arch has been built into that chimney wall there. It's not visible from here, but we will see it later as we move on through the house. So if we're talking about medieval, the 1330s, 1350s, possibly a packed mud floor, possibly lime ash, similar to this. No wall here, just a low screen, shoulder height, looking straight out at the animals. No ceiling, and you would see the roof right up through. The fire would be in the middle, and this was the room that you worked in, lived in, ate in, slept in, everything in, with the possibility of an inner room behind it, behind another screen, which would have been the workroom, the kitchen, the dairy, and whatever. Okay, this wall here and fireplace, as I said, is around about 1500. The floor is lime ash flooring, which would have been certainly around in that period and has been here ever since. It has been excavated. Nothing much was found. We found an old, I think they found an old farm worker's boot, but that could easily have been 19th century, not necessarily much earlier. Okay, big windows on the east side there. When this wall was put in, a new door was put into the east. That's the west door, sorry. This is on the east wall. A new door was put in, and you can just see here the edge of a window, which has been blocked in, and these two were opened up in the early 1500s when the fireplace wall were built. Everything's still open to the roof, so everything blackened, all the rafters and everything blackened by the smoke. This gave the owners a separate doorway from having to come into the cross passage in with the animals. The stone mullion window here, which is in the west wall, is later, possibly moved from the east wall in the mid 1600s, possibly reclaimed from old monastic buildings or whatever. There's the this is the back wall of the hall. Would have been a shoulder height plank and muntin screen originally. Even in 1500 that would have been the same, so this was low, all the ceilings open to the roof, and the inner room behind, which you can just see there, open to the roof and visible. The wall came that little bit later. The joists here are newer because this bit was left out in front of the fireplace and was raised up and made into a box in the 17th century. This was a smoke box for smoking meat, but it also put heat into the bedroom that was put up there in the mid 17th century. In order to do that, this wall had to be built. It's only that high, 1 floor high. This window was changed. The doorway and the window that we saw in the previous slide were blocked up to take these cross beams, and the joists run from the granite wall with the fireplace on top of this wall, that is the top of the wall, and poke out into the inner room to give a jetty. This is unusual. Normally, with medieval halls, it's the inner room behind the main hall that is ceilinged and turned into different rooms upstairs and whatever, whereas the main hall is kept open for show and whatever. So this is quite an unusual experience to find that the hall has been done and the inner room wasn't. Those we'll see the jetty in a minute. The storage cupboard here in this wall is mid 17th century, came with the wall for storing herbs, the old spice perhaps. These people here now again are still very wealthy. If we're looking at mid 17th century, they've been able to build the wall here. They've been able to put a ceiling in. They've been able to open up and make the place much more comfortable, much warmer. There's still another fireplace at the back of the inner room. And although this has a ceiling now because there's a room above, the inner room is still open to the roof. Now, in the last 2 years, we've had some replicas made. So we have a medieval table with baskets from medieval period and pottery, just to add some decoration to make the place look a bit more lived in. And these are usually on display. The fruits here are made of wood, beautifully made. They're wonderful, very deceiving. They're really good. And wood turning done by a local guide. Tables all made locally by people known to parks and who have connections. Here we have some more. We got some groats over there on the plate. Here's the fruit, looking very real. Mushrooms. The wood turned plate. This is an original 1600 pewter spoon. And here I'd like to think this is true. Here is a 1600 lady's shoe They belong to me, those two bits, but I bring them along to add colour. Wouldn't it be nice to think that that was actually the shoe from the lady who lived here? I mean, it'd be lovely, wouldn't it? But I would be lying if I said so. So, and these two little things are loom weights, medieval loom weights, and there would probably have been a loom in the back room making cloth to make clothing. So here's that smoke box. The fireplace is here. There's the oak lintel. These are newer than the joist over there. That would have been raised up a foot or so above. Smoke collected here. You could hang joints of meat to smoke them to make them last longer, and it took some warmth up into that upper room. So that's mid 17th century. All getting better, all getting more modern, I suppose you could say, getting more comfortable to live in, and all costing a lot of money, so belonging to a fairly wealthy family. This is the inner room downstairs. You can see the hall fireplace there. Look, here's the end of those joists, the jetty as we call it, poking out. And the ceiling here is modern. It was only put in a couple of years ago. It's completely detachable. It's not actually attached to the house. It's to replace the flooring that was there probably from very late 18th century, 19th century. It's just replacing what was a bit shaky, shall we say. The walls are white. That's lime wash in keeping, and again we have a lime ash floor. If we look at that from the other side, there's the door into the hall. This is the staircase, probably late 19th century, going up onto that platform there to take you into the bedroom above, which would be to the right. When they built the parlour wing at the end of the 17th century, on the east side, the one up, one down, there appears to have been a door at some stage put in here to take you into the hall of that particular part. Again, blocked up later because as the fortunes of the house fell, this became an agricultural cottage. We know that there were two families at least living here. We had 9 in one part of the bit and 8 living in the other part of the building. And so it turned into 2 labourers' tenements rather than a pretty wealthy yeoman's type of house. And there again, over the doorway, are the jetty at the end of these joists, giving us the jetty. That's the window downstairs in the inner room, again with some replica baskets just to add some colour. And you see how dark it is as a natural thing, even on a summer's day. Now we've gone upstairs. We're now in the chamber above the hall. Here's the flooring. This bit is a different colour. These are original mid-17th century floorboards from when this ceiling was put in. These aren't. This was where the smoke box was, and we had a hole there at one stage, and it's decided to put them in level with the main floor because that way you can now see the relieving arch that I said set into the chimney to take the weight of the chimney above going up into the roof. Okay. And it's just a wider view. You can see that relieving arch quite clearly there. Lime wash on the walls. Now, the walls may not have been plastered in the mid-17th century. This could be an 18th century plastering. At the time, of course, we were now going up into the roof to make this room. So the roof was raised, and we now have notched A-framed joists forming the roof, taken up that bit higher from there up to there, and roof beams, which are, these are therefore mid-17th century roof beams up here. So again, the ceiling was not there in the 17th century. It wasn't ceilinged up here to hide the roof, the joists and the thatch, until late 18th, perhaps 19th centuries. So again, all the joists and things up there are black with soot. Here's the, you can see mortise and tenoning on these planks for the floor now from the 17th century, set in to drop down into the cross beams. Rather lovely. So mind your feet when you're walking round. This is the other end. Now, under here is that wall dividing the hall from the inner room. This close studded partition was built mid-17th century when they built this room. It sits on top of that wall. It does not go up right to touch the roof, as I said, because none of these do. We've got a space there right the way through. There are notches down each side of these planks, one notch cut into that side, a notch cut into that side, right the way down, and the laths were settled into those and then plastered over the top. So that's a close studded partition, okay, mid-17th century. Now, some of you are going to notice some marks on those. These here, this is quite an interesting little tale. These are burn marks done by candles. I'm led to believe that the method is to hold a candle at 45 degrees for about 40 minutes against the wood, and it burns a mark like that into the wood. And the reason for doing this might seem a bit of a strange activity when you've got a thatch roof and a lot of wood in the house, but it's a belief that by burning part of a new building or a new addition to the building, you protect the house against fire. It's a nice superstition, that one. Or that they keep evil spirits out of the house. And so we have them on both sides of this screen. We have those, and on this side you can see some more there and here, and some more there and some more there. So they were really trying to protect this building from nasty things. So that would be mid-17th century again. Okay, now if we go, just pop back into the hall for a minute. Well, what's happened over the last few years is that part of the 19th century ceiling, the plastering, has been taken out and a glass plate put in, and we can now look through the glass to the 17th century roofing and 17th century thatching. All black smoked, because as I said, until the 19th century, these ceilings were not there. The roof was completely opened. The hall chamber, the bedroom, was ceilinged first, and then the inner room not until the 19th century. So we can still see mid-17th century woodwork roofing in situ. Okay, that's rather worth seeing too. If we go back outside, here's the east courtyard again. What are we looking at? There's the shippen with its raised roof. Here's the livier, the living area, with the fireplace from that main chimney and fireplace. This is where the hall chamber, the bedroom, is, and when that was put in mid-17th century, they had to put this window in because there would have been no light up there at all otherwise. And then late 17th century, we get the parlour wing, which we will go to in a minute. These outshots were not here, but there may have been some kind of porchway here with the building of this bit to allow access accordingly. Okay, and that's the 19th century barn that we haven't got to yet. So with renovations coming on in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years, the outshot buildings, which were probably early 19th century, late 18th, early 19th century, these are built on the scantle style of slate. The outer edges and the bottom have large tiles, and the rest of the roof has tiles which are smaller, and it makes quite an attractive finish to the roof. So those were completed in the last 2 or 3 years. That's the chimney for the fireplace in the main hall. That's the fireplace chimney from the parlour wing from the late 17th century. Now we go inside the parlour wing. This is the hall of the parlour wing. It's much smaller. So one up, one down when it was built. So we have the oak lintel, we have a fireplace, albeit the stove isn't original, nor are the electric lamps. It was ceilinged because it had an upstairs. We have a staircase which is not original. We have 19th century. Here went originally, we think, to one room, but again, late 18th, early 19th century, that was changed to 2 rooms upstairs. Here's one of them at the top of the stairs. And here's the other. Bearing in mind that by now, late 18th century, 19th century, we're in a less privileged era for the house, and we had 8 people, 9 people in this bit wing, and 8, 9 people living in the main house. So a lot of labourers sharing, and so we needed slightly smaller rooms perhaps, and rooms for more people. So let's have a look at some earlier pictures. This is 19th century. We can see the medieval barn here. This is the same entrance pillars, gateway, the same gate, well, perhaps not the same gate, but same gateway. There's our medieval barn, which doesn't exist anymore. Shippen, Livier, the hall chamber, the hall, the parlour wing, and the barn. And the water supply came through the back of the barn, through the barn, out the door, across the courtyard, and down through the garden. And all the water came through, and that was the same, so I'm told by people who lived there in the 50s and 60s that that state was still the same then. So it's quite amazing. If we turn now to the 1940s, we can see that we've got some plastering on there. This is the medieval barn. So 1940s, it disappeared. An upper hayloft forming the edge. This is what is now the road from Poundsgate to Dartmeet, and that's the end of the 19th century barn with a door there, which I don't think is there anymore. So changes again. By the 1950s, we still have a barn. We've got a different type of plastering on there, on the parlour wing. Got newish thatch here, that bit newer than that bit. And you'll notice that the medieval barn has gone. So sometime in the 1940s, looks like that barn was demolished. And this is a very famous character called Jack Warren, who was living here in the 1950s. I need to say that the first mention of Higher Uppacott, it seemed to be 1330 on a subsidy roll where it was owned by a Ralph de Uppacott, which is French in origin, of course, and probably gives a very accurate clue as to when the house was built. By the early 1400s, the fiefment belonged to Abraham Thomas, and he was renting to a William Beard. And then it stayed as one house right through to the early 1700s, and then started changing from there. So modern day, we have a thatcher putting in the new thatch. Some of you watching might actually know him, I guess. A local man. We have the slater doing the outshots. We have the cross passage being renewed and repaired with the cobbles. You can see some cobbles out there on the courtyard too, done much the same time. And we had an extensive survey into the building. We had the floors up to find anything about the story there. We've got checking the dates of the timbering, so taking samples, the dendrochronology, I think it's called, that to ascertain. So these being mid-17th century. And we come back to the view that was there in 2019, 2020. Garden a bit overgrown. And we finish on how it looks this week. The garden is being cleared out. We're planning to put some medieval herbs in and make it a bit more original from there. And so there we will stop.
Okay, I'm just going to say one final thing then. I think one of the most fascinating things, well, there's two fascinating things. I think seeing the shippen is really special, and seeing how dark it is, and just imagining all those cattle tethered up there, and that really transports you back the 800 or so years since it was made, but also getting the glimpse of the smoke blackened thatch as well, and just to sort of think that actually, you know, when that thatch was being blackened, it would have been a big open fire in there as well. So those are my two special moments, I think, when I think about Higher Uppacott.
Yeah, and the shippen is one of, I believe, only 4 left untouched.
Yeah.
Most of the others of these longhouses, and there are hundreds of them, they've all been converted into nice lounges and bedrooms up above and so on. But there are very, very few left untouched like that one. So it really is a very rare house.
Yes, and I think if people want to find out a bit more about this before they can book on a tour, then there are some videos on YouTube that we've done, some medieval videos. Living and Dying on Medieval Dartmoor is a really good introduction to medieval life on the moor. So please check that out. It's a really fascinating little film, and Higher Uppacott does feature in it as well. And I think there's another one as well about the dig at Hound Tor as well. And if you blink and you miss it, but there is a brief cameo by me in that, sort of wandering around trying to do some proper acting as well in that. So anyway. Chris is saying his wife lived in a longhouse like this when she was a child. Yeah, I think they were quite common, weren't they? Longhouses up to a point, and they're still there, but they're kind of hidden, like you say, by the
Well,
the
there's well
modern,
over 100 on the moor.
yeah, and it's those modern additions that go to it that kind of almost disguise
Yeah,
the old
yeah,
building behind it. It because with higher Uppacott you get that don't you? You get the sense that when you go to one side of it, to the west side, isn't it? Then you get the full longhouse
you get the
experience.
original view pretty much.
But if you come in from the east side, you get the courtyard, and you might not think it was a medieval longhouse
That's
from that
right. Yeah,
that side.
very much altered on that side.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
fascinating. There are no more specific questions in there that I can see. So I think we probably come towards a natural conclusion there. This year we are celebrating 70 years of the national park, so we're reflecting on how things have changed over those last 70 years. So again, those last few pictures you showed, Ian, were fantastic to think how some people were still living in buildings with water running through them, like you said.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
Yeah.
and
Well, I met some
how
of the
we can,
families who lived there.
yeah,
They came
it's
on a tour I was doing of the house. It was just fascinating seeing, meeting them in where they were children. It's
yes,
wonderful.
yeah, no, fantastic. So take an eye out for our 70th anniversary events and activities that run through the year, um, run through this year. Also, keep an eye out for our butterfly talk next month. If there are any specific talks or subjects that you're interested in hearing about, then please do get in touch, and we might be able to try and organise some of those over coming months and things. And let us know how you're enjoying the programme as well. That's always useful to know. But on behalf of myself and the National Park, I'd like to thank Ian once again. So I'll do
Thank
a
you.
round of applause on behalf of everyone there. Thank you for your time tonight, Ian. It's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you to all of you for joining us this evening and enjoying and listening to Ian and finding out a bit more about Higher Uppacott. We hope we'll be able to put on some tours, in the near future. So watch this space, and we will work within the guidelines that come out over the coming months. And so on behalf of everyone, thank you, everyone. I'm going to finish the broadcast here. So enjoy your evenings and take care. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Right. Night.